Okay, welcome everyone. Massive thank you for coming along tonight. For those of you who are here in person and those of you who are planning to listen online, welcome. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet. I'm on the Whadjuk Noongar land. Hopefully you know where you are. I just wanted to acknowledge our traditional owners and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Over to you, Rob. Do you want to do welcome Mel or shall I keep going? I can keep going.
You keep going. You do the first bit, I'll do the second bit. So we're having a little bit of a tag team tonight, everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so massive thank you to Mel for jumping on tonight. Mel is the go-to lady that I go to every time I have a question around World Triathlon. Anything to do with racing, she's the one who should hopefully know the answer, and if not, she'll find it out for you. And she very generously offered to give up her time tonight to try and explain this to us. I feel like when I first looked at this, I felt like I need to be some sort of mathematical genius or actuary when I first started to look at the World Triathlon points. But hopefully Mel will explain it to us all in a way that we can all understand as best as possible. I still think it's a bit complicated. And this is a great reference for everyone who's thinking of racing at World Triathlon level, either now or in the future, just so you understand the process, what's involved, and how the point system works. So if that's okay, Mel, we'll head over to you and I can start sharing my screen if you're happy, or you want to say something first?
No, I'm good. Yes, hello. Thank you for having me. Hopefully I will have some answers, but if you've got any questions, just pop your hand up and we'll do our best to answer them. Yeah, so we'll go to the next slide. So we are talking about races today that are governed by World Triathlon. So they're generally your Conti Cups and your Oceania races, and then your international Conti Cups in Europe, both junior and elite. There's a few levels of racing. You start usually at a Conti Cup level, and with each step up, there's a noticeable step up in quality of field and the type of racing. For most people on this call, we'll be dealing with Conti Cups for a little while. And the process for nominating for those. When you get to World Cup racing in both Olympic program and Paralympic program, and then the World Championship Series racing, the nomination process changes slightly, and it's done by a selection committee rather than just by nomination. All right, so next slide, please. So the different levels of racing obviously attract different levels of points. When you're starting out, I guess just getting in and doing some racing is the best option. But we've listed all the events there and the points for the winner, and then the points decrease for each place. Sprint distance events are only worth 75% of the points of standard distance events, but as juniors, that doesn't really apply to you because you only race sprint distance events. So you'll obtain full points for sprint distance. And so the main race we've got coming up that affects you is Devonport, which will be a junior Conti champs. So if we can just go to the next slide, the things that all athletes need to do once the race is governed by World Triathlon is to have completed these things on this screen. So your pre-participation evaluation form, and we can post the links in the team chat, or the slides have them at the end. This is located on the AusTri website. It's a little bit hard to find. It's under resources, and then all the way down to the bottom you scroll and you get performance. And all of these sort of things are in there. So this needs to be completed by every athlete every 12 months. And as part of that evaluation, you need to do an ECG every 2 years. We keep those on file, and we have an agreement that our CEO has to sign each year saying that we will not place anyone on a wait list who has not completed a pre-participation evaluation. And it's a health check, basically. So you can do it, have a look on the website, the form's there, you just take it to your doctor and they can step through it with you. once you've completed it, if you can send it to one of the emails on that screen, one of them's mine and one of them's our general HP email address. And we just keep that on file each year. So before we nominate you, you'll need to have done that. A pro license or a pro development license at a junior level doesn't really apply. But if you are looking to race some of the Conti Cups in Asia or in Europe, or you are planning to do a bit of travel, it is recommended. Once you get to an elite field, you will need to have that license to race. But as at a junior level, you don't. So it is something to consider when you start to plan out your season. And if you are traveling, there are some added benefits of having that license. So yeah, if you're going to race elite, you do have to have it because there is prize money involved. The only other thing that's really important to do, everyone needs a World Triathlon Education Hub profile, and you need to complete an anti-doping course. So as juniors, to race at a junior level, you'll need a junior anti-doping course. And you simply go into that website, create your own profile with the same name and email address that you would use in your World Triathlon profile. If you don't have one of those yet, that's okay. But you can still do the anti-doping ahead of time. And then you'll need to go into that anti-doping square and complete the junior anti-doping course. Now, if you've done that through Sports Integrity Australia, all you need to do is upload that certificate. It does take, it's a bit of a manual process from there. They actually verify it by person. So it's a manual check that that's actually been done. So it takes a little bit longer, but your profile on World Triathlon is locked. We cannot enter you into any wait lists until you've completed anti-doping. Now, for athletes, I think that needs to be done every 24 months. For coaches, that needs to be done every 12 months. So you need to update that. So if you nominate for a Conti Cup, say you're nominating for Devonport, in the first instance, I will email back and say, do you have a current pre-participation evaluation form, and have you done your anti-doping? Because they're the two main things that would prohibit us from getting you on a wait list. All right, next slide, please.
Sorry, can I just ask then, Mel,
Yes.
is that for the elite and under 23 race? Do the juniors is their junior race an actual world tri race? Is it
I'm
normally?
not sure. The Devonport entry portal has not opened yet.
Oh, okay.
It's not an event on World Triathlon just yet, so we can't see what events they're taking. If it is not, then this won't apply. But say you wanted to race the junior Oceania champs in Napier, you'd need to have done all of this. So, and sometimes I've encountered a few times with athletes who possibly don't live in major cities or don't have a regular doctor. Sometimes it can be hard to get this pre-participation evaluation done. So it is something you need to do every year. And like we just advise that you either start that process in November for the next year of racing.
Sorry, can I just add to that as well, Mel? Sometimes you do an ACG and there comes, you get a report back of something not quite right, and then you do need to go and get a referral to a cardiologist. And a lot of the times the cardiologist then approves it anyway. So allow a fair bit of time when you're having that ECG done. Don't do it very close to a race that you want to enter.
Yeah.
Yes, that is very common because young people are fitter than the average person, and often your heart is a little bigger or little better.
Yeah, and as I said, we can't actually put you on the wait list. So we'll get to the timelines for doing that. But if you're not on the wait list by the time the start lists are produced, some races will fill up straight away and you won't get an opportunity to race purely because we couldn't put you on a wait list. So anti-doping and pre-participation evaluation, they are two standards that you need to race at this level. And it's advised just to get them done each year as soon as you can. They're valid for 12 months. So okay, so to nominate, so if the race in Devonport is not governed by World Triathlon, it's just like a national junior race. If it's an Oceania Championships, it'll be governed by World Triathlon. Otherwise, if it's not, you will just enter with the race director or the race site. So like you would do for Noosa or 2XU series or any of the local triathlons, it's the same process. Once you get to the events that are governed by World Triathlon, like your Oceania Cups and international competitions, we have to, all nominations are done through the federation, so you can't physically nominate yourself. But Oceania Continental Cups, as soon as they appear on the World Triathlon website, we'll produce a nomination form and we can send that link to anyone who is wanting to nominate. It just helps us capture all information that we require, and it helps us then to also do those checks that your membership's up to date, you've done your PPE and your anti-doping. So anything like in Australia, New Zealand, that'll be done by a form that we'll send out. Outside of that, Asia, international, European Conti Cups, it's all you'll need to do is send an email. So you can send an email to myself or to the admin with your name as per the profile, because people use their nicknames sometimes and then they're hard to find. The event date and name, and then at the category in which you want to race. So if you are going to Asia to do an elite Conti Cup, you just put elite. If there are junior and under 23 categories and you want to be placed in one of those, just note that, and you will get an email back saying you have been nominated for this event. So those emails come to me, and as soon as I get them, within 24 hours, we'll have placed you on the wait list. So as soon as you want to race something, it's best to put yourself on the wait list. Once you get to World Cup and World Series level and want to race in those, they're done by a call for nominations. It comes out through MailChimp, and I'll generally update that list with anyone who has a pro or pro development license, because that's what's required, and we'll send that out. It's been 45 days prior to the event, but that's going to be extended a little bit further this year, so a little bit more time to prepare. So about 60 days, that'll come out. You click the link and you can nominate for that event. It'll also have a link to the selection criteria. That is selected by our elite selection committee, and they're pretty strict on only selecting those who meet the criteria. So all of those things, all of these resources are on the AusTri website under performance, the performance tab. So you can have a look through them. You can check the selection policies as they sit. They are last year's. The new ones are still under review. But it's always good to have a read through those. It gives you an update of an idea of what you're aiming for each level of racing. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so World Series, as I said, World Series and World Cup racing is by email. It's done quite a way in advance because it is selected by a committee. So it takes a little time. Nominations will close. At the moment, they close 40 days out from the event, and there's about 10 days where the selection committee reviews all the applications, all of their results, and then they select the team. All right, next slide, please. That one won't apply just yet. So the Oceania Continental Cups are the ones that require you guys to have done your PPEs and the anti-doping. And then, as I said, we'll send out a form for anything that's either Australia or New Zealand, just purely because of the number of applications we generally get for those. It's much easier to track. And you will get an email confirmation once you have done that. So once we enter them all in, I'll email you personally and say, you've been placed on the wait list for this event. If you want to race something that's Oceania, you haven't received the link, you can email me and ask. And I'm more than happy to send it out. Janine will get them, Robin will get them, Aileen will have them. So we try and get them out there as far as we can to give as many people an opportunity. So, but if you don't have it, feel free to email me and we can put them out. As I said, the Devonport form is created, but it's not on the World Triathlon website yet, so we can't send it out. I can't actually put nominations in for that one yet. All right, next slide, please. And this is, I said this before, the international Conti Cups, we don't do a form. You can just email me with the events that you want to race in, and we'll place you on the wait list and confirm by email. All right, next slide, please. All right, so a few questions on nominating for these events. When should you nominate? As soon as you know you want to race. The start lists are produced on a Tuesday evening, about 30 days out from the event. They must be at least 30 days out from the event. So you want to have nominated prior to a start list being produced. If you want to nominate after that, you go to the bottom of the wait list. So they're all time-stamped after the start list is produced. And as spaces become available, if it fills up, then they'll just add them first in, best dressed. So everyone who I'll try and think of an example. We had a race last year where there was like 150 nominations for the elite men for a Conti Cup, and now the maximum field for this race was about 75. So we had equal number of people on the start list, but also on the wait list. So if you really want to race that race and you didn't get your nomination in prior to the start list being published by World Triathlon, then you're basically going to be 76th on the wait list and not really have a good chance of racing that. So the World Triathlon website has all the races listed for the whole year, usually by January. So you can go through and have a look when you're planning your race season. And once you know what that looks like, you can nominate. It doesn't mean that you will get a start, but it's also before the start lists are produced, it's quite easy to pull you off. If something happens or you change your plans, it's easy to change that. So getting on those wait lists is the important thing prior to the start list being produced.
So Mel, can I ask, is it best that they send you one email with all of the things they want to do, or individual emails for each event?
Either
sounds
or.
Like a lot of admin. Okay.
Yeah, either or, because sometimes you don't know everything that you want to race, or you'll put in for one race and not get a start. So we'll, find a different race and you can nominate for that. World Triathlon does list events in hierarchy. So if you nominate for 2 events on the one day, on the one weekend, one will be considered more important than the other, and they would give like preference for that one. So if you're going to be, they won't place you on 2 start lists, basically. You can't be in 2 places at once. And because that comes down to, if we can go to the next slide, once they place you on the start list, which they can do up until about 2 hours before the race. So if you've nominated for an event, it is then your responsibility to withdraw as soon as you know you cannot race. So if you don't make that start list when they're produced, they keep you on the wait list, and there is a lot of movement sometimes in those wait lists. So say you were sitting 7th or 8th on the wait list and don't remove yourself when you know you don't want to race, 2 hours prior to a race start in another country, they can add you to a start list and you're expected to be there. So withdrawing from an event is the responsibility of the athlete at this level. It needs to be in writing by email. And as soon as you know you can't race, it's best to do that, because you can forget sometimes. It's happened a lot that you nominated for something, don't make the start list, forget that you're there, and then World Triathlon gives me a call and says, are they in the country? We're going to add them to the start list. So, yeah.
Sorry, Mel, question. What's the consequence of that?
So there are penalties. So penalties for World Triathlon, if you are late to briefing, you'll be given a 15-second T1 penalty. So once you're on the start list, athletes must attend the briefing and you need to be on time. If you don't attend the briefing, you can, without notification, you can be removed from every start list for the next 30 days. Yeah. So World Triathlon, and that is the important part of the process, is that once you are going to nominate for these events, you do really need to keep an eye on those start lists. And if you can't race or you can't travel, then let me know so that we can withdraw you. So it's not as simple as going in and taking you off the list. We actually have to request your withdrawal after those start lists have been produced.
So what would you say is that is there a healthy number? Like if you were 5th on the start list, on the wait list, sorry, should you make your way to that country just in case? Or do you normally recommend if you don't make the start list and you're not 1 or 2?
That's a good question. That is a good question. It is a waiting game. And like we play that waiting game right up to the elite level this year with some of the World Triathlon Series races, with some of our athletes not making the start list. So we just have to wait it out. And I can see the wait lists and how they change every day. So that is something we can monitor. But in Australia, I say you'd be pretty safe to stay on the wait list. If you have to travel internationally and you didn't make the start list, then that's a discussion. Between your coach, your parents, and you could ask advice from Aileen or myself of where you sit and what the likely chances are. Also, having said that, start lists are produced, those 35 days out. They always hold about 5 spots. So they'll produce, so say the race cap is 70, they'll only put 65 on that start list to start with. And then by the Friday of that week, they'll generally make sure they've got the full 70. So just you keep an eye on it. So once they produce a start list, if you're on the start list, usually Wednesday, the next day, you'll be notified by email. It'll come from the admin HP email address. And that'll be me just letting you know you've been added to the start list. And if I have that information about registration and fee payment, I'll put that in that email as well. So athletes need to register with the LOC, the local organising committee, so whoever the race organiser is, and pay their entry fee for Conti Cups. That information isn't always available as soon as the start list comes out, but the website and the race site for each event will usually have that information. And as I said, you're required to attend the briefing, so and be on time. So they do mark it. A minute late is too much. So the biggest lesson some of our juniors and under 23s learned in Townsville is that if you are late to briefing, you will have a penalty. All right, next slide, I think.
Unless you have a medical certificate.
A medical
to
certificate.
say that you're in hospital having an operation at the current moment of time or something similar to that.
Yep. And then even then it is at the discretion of the race director whether they accept that or not. Yeah. They don't always have to, but yeah, sometimes they can be strict. Just depends who you get. But yeah, it's just good practice to try and make sure you're 10 minutes early. All right. Now, the other thing about World Triathlon is that they have some strict uniform rules. There's a link here to the uniform guidelines. It's a lot of information about uniforms, but basically there are certain locations where you can have logos, and you need to have your name and country code on the front and back of your suit. And there are specific sizes for those things. And often in these World Triathlon races, when you get checked in on the day of the race, they will photograph your suit to make sure, and they'll hold up a piece of cardboard to make sure that that logo is the right size. So each logo has a maximum size, and you need to abide by that. So I have linked the uniform guidelines in there, but any race suit providers, and just an example that we've dealt with, say for Townsville, Scody, they know the World Triathlon regulations. So when you go to buy an elite racing suit from them, you'll just put in the position you want your logos, and they know exactly what size they're allowed to be. So when you are buying a suit or creating a suit, whoever the manufacturer is, just ask them that question. But that document can be downloaded and passed on to them so that they can make sure your logos are the correct size. So
just add in there as well, the New South Wales state suits are compliant to World Triathlon Uniform Guidelines, as I'm sure are the WA and the Queensland. And so all of the state suits will be, because they're all from SCOTI, they will all be compliant. If you're an Academy of Sport, they are all compliant as well.
Yes, correct. And for Conti Cups, you can wear any, compliant race suit. Once you get to World Cup and above, you have to wear the Australian suit. So just keep that in mind if you're nominating for those things. And you think you meet the criteria, please also just drop me an email saying you're doing that so that I can make sure that we have suits in your size ready to go, should you be selected. Cool. All right, next slide, please. I think that's the last one. A lot of information. Look, it's a process. You get to know it fairly well once you've done it a bit, but happy to answer any questions. So if you have any questions or you're not sure what to do or you are not sure about something, please just drop me an email and I certainly will get back to you with the information if I don't know, which is often. When I can't stress enough, the World Triathlon website has a lot of information. If you scroll right to the bottom, there's a section called Documents. And if you click on that, it has every document, how world ranking is created, uniform rules, selection criteria for adding you to start lists, things like that. There's hundreds and hundreds of pages of information there. So if I don't know the answer, I'll usually go and read that document. But if I can't find it out, I do just email them and ask the question. So, and I think the last page I put up was the links, but I do believe Aileen put those in the chat. Yeah. So there's some links for important websites from World Triathlon, from AusTri, and they're all our performance resources. So there's lots of information there. As I said, if you still if you've looked at that and you're still not sure, please just send me an email and we can certainly work through, what's required.
I will add to that, though, after listening to that, Mel, your inbox must be quite massive. So let's all make sure we investigate ourselves first, take some ownership of this process. Don't just assume that there's somebody who's going to give you the answer. Have a look on those sites. And then if you have the question, reach out to Mel. But sounds like she's a very busy lady, so don't harass her if it's a really obvious thing to go and find.
And yeah, usually I try and get back to everyone within the day, but at some points in the season, there's obviously a little bit more going on than other points in the season. So it could take a couple of days. Or usually if it takes more than a couple of days, it's because I'm trying to find out the information for you. I will say that it's good to have a read of the Conti Cup selection policy on the AusTri website. Now, all our selection policies are under review for next year, and they'll be made available in the new year sometime. There shouldn't be too many changes to the Conti Cup policy, but if you have a read of that, you'll get a better understanding of the process and what's involved and kind of what they're looking for. It's aimed at elite, so take it with a grain of salt. As juniors, giving opportunities to race is what we do. So don't be scared off by that policy. Yeah.
So juniors, normally there isn't a cap, is there, for junior racing generally locally?
No, so there's not a cap for junior racing locally. We try and give as many opportunities, especially World Triathlon events run in Australia. We can usually get as many as we like onto the start list. When you start going to Europe, they do have a quota. Each country has a quota. And I think in juniors, it's 3. So if the race is full and some of them are really popular, we'll only get 3 per gender on the start list. And then anything else is at the discretion of the race director. So if we have lots of highly ranked juniors coming off the back of an Oceania campaign, then we might get a few more. But yeah, The other thing I would say is that if you're looking at races in the US, they're Conti champs. They won't add you to the start list. There's no requirement for them to do it. So if it's a championship race for them, they don't have to allow anyone outside the continent, and they generally don't. So Europe, a little bit more, compliant to do that. Asia does that, but the US, they have the numbers already. They don't normally let you. So, is there any questions? It's a lot of information, and don't be scared off by the process. Once you've done it once, you'll, find out that it's not too bad.
Obviously, for a lot of the juniors on the call, if you're a youth, and this is just information for future, bank it. For the juniors on the call, most of your races, you will just deal with the LOC, or if Devonport is Oceania, you'll do the process. You need your PPE and finish your SI, your sport integrity modules, which you should have all done anyway.
Yes.
And then you'll be able to get on the start list, and we'll go through the process for those who've expressed interest to travel, and others as well. If you're a junior looking to race an elite and under 23 race, they race together, you need to go through the process of talking to Mel, and in a lot of cases, if you're outside of Australia, you'll need your professional development license. Is that correct?
Yes. And even in Australia at under 23 level, you will need it. It has been waived in the past for certain races for locals, but generally speaking, you'll need it. Yeah.
So under 23s, you need it. Juniors, you don't, unless there's some special other considerations of racing that you want to do. Try and save your coin, or your parents' coin, actually, in this situation, most likely.
Yeah. All the information about the Pro Development License is under the Resources tab on the AusTri website. There is actually a selection policy document outlining the kind of results you're looking at for a Pro Development License. Having said that, if that's what you have decided is best for you, apply. Because, again, we try and give as many opportunities. So if you don't strictly meet the criteria, we would generally... Either if we were going to deny it, we would definitely have that conversation with you first. So,
Robin's taken over, have you?
Yeah, no, that's.
I'm just showing the professional development license where it is on this in this section here under resources, performance, and then under professional license policy.
Yeah, and the application form sits right beside it. So,
awesome. Thanks, Mel. Thank you.
I think that's.
Anyone's got any questions?
Thank you so much, Mel. I don't know that there was any questions that came through. It must have been very thorough information that you gave there, Mel.
Or completely over your head for the minute until you have to go and do it, and then you might have questions. So
yeah, or they might just go, "Oh, I remember what Mel said. That's right."
But if I can say one thing, it's just the resources that we popped in the chat and the links. Just save them to your desktop or save them in your favorites, because you will need them at some point if you continue racing at this level and continue to progress up. And so they're all good sources of information. So
thanks, Mel.
Thank you so much for having me. Okay, thanks for that. Everyone, we have part 2 of our session, which is now travel information and travel insurance. So we're just rolling on to that now. So we've got Kim Mason on board to help us with this presentation. So Kim is a multi-industry award-winning travel agent and local business leader, and she has over 20 years of experience in the travel industry, and that is backed by a constant training and a lifetime love of travel. She's also competed in all distances of triathlon. She's passionate about the sport as a competitor, a pathway parent, and a coach, and specializes in not only triathlon travel but also cruising, family travel, and snow travel. Kim has a Bachelor of Commerce, Marketing and Hospitality Management from the University of New South Wales. And I'm just going to share screen with this presentation now. I'm sure everybody, though, has seen Kim Mason at events, at local events and at Billigence events and this sort of a thing. And I'm sure that everybody is very familiar with Kim Mason. So I will just be 1 second sharing this document. So just let me know if you can see that just now.
Hey, looks great. Thanks, Robin.
That's okay. Hang on a second. Got to go full screen. Anyway, here's your first one while I just work out the other bits and pieces. So over to Kim.
Okay, thanks, everyone. You can also find me at coffee shops at races as well. So who am I to talk to you about travel insurance? As Robin said, I've been in the industry now for about 27 years. So I've seen a lot of things from 9/11 to COVID to wars, to all my clients probably having the worst day of their lives on their holidays. This can be anything from a dog bite in Vietnam to a snowboarding accident or to a broken hip in Italy or even drink spiking. It does happen. So things happen, and that is what you need travel insurance for. So firstly, I need to say this is a disclaimer that what I'm talking about today is general advice only. I've not taken into account any personal situations, and I'm not giving any personal advice. This is all general information to help you make great decisions about insurance policies for your travels. The information that I'm discussing with you, so I've got to turn this, just got to ask my techie if I can turn it. The information I'm discussing with you has come from my own personal experience, not only as a travel agent in helping my clients, but also being on the receiving end of being in that situation where there's a major incident and I've had to be the one dealing with the insurance and making sure that everything was okay. So let's get started. So why do you need travel insurance? The biggest answer is because medical treatment is really expensive. And for that, I want to tell you a story. So behind me, you'll see this really great picture. And in it, there are two people snowboarding. And this one on the right, an hour later, was wrapped around a tree. So I think he had 9 broken ribs, a ruptured spleen, a bruised heart, punctured lung, just a few things going on. And he spent about 2 weeks in hospital in Canada. Now, what I want you to have a think about is how much do you think the insurance claim was for his treatment? Just go into the chat box and just put down a figure. And let's just see what you guys think that would have cost. Robin, has anyone put in any ideas?
I went 22,000.
Higher and higher and higher. Anyone got any ideas? 80,000.
80K.
25,000.
25.
Okay.
Let's have one more. 40,000.
Okay.
Which one is the winner?
None of the above. So the 2 weeks, I know, Robin, you were so close. No, the 2 week stay alone was in excess of 250 Canadian dollars. That doesn't even include
250.
the return home with the nurse. So unless you've got that floating around in your bank account, a small accident could cost you a lot. So you need to make sure that you have the right insurance in place. So that's why you need insurance. It does cover many other things as well, which we will get into. So let's go to the next slide. So there are lots of things you need to know about travel insurance. But I want to talk about the 3 big things because every policy is completely different. You cannot look at 5 insurance policies and assume they all cover the same thing. Every single one has a different inclusion and an exclusion. So there are 3 big things that you really should look at. And the first one is, am I covered for the things that I'm going to do on my trip? So when I say that to people, they often think, I'm going to go bungee jumping, parachuting, paragliding, rafting. But for you guys, you need to wonder and look at, am I covered for the event that I'm going to participate in? Am I covered for the triathlon, the open water swim, the bike race? What I can tell you is from the policies that I'm familiar with, triathlon is not covered automatically. Bike races are not covered automatically, and neither are open water swims. The only events they cover are foot races. So this is something that you need to be aware of when you're looking at a policy. The other things you need to take into account, sorry, I'm just scrolling down here, is other activities you might be doing. If you're planning on going to a race and hiring a moped to get around, that may not be an automatic cover either. So you need to read that policy really, really well. And one other note, because I know we have some over 18s on the call, and something that a lot of people aren't familiar with is that alcohol is a big issue for insurance. So if you're planning on having a drink, you need to know what the alcohol limit is prescribed by the insurance company, because if you do have an accident or a medical incident and your blood alcohol level is higher than what the insurance company will accept, your claim will be denied. And every policy is different. For some it's 0.05, for some it's higher, for some it's lower. So that's just something you need to be aware of. You need to read the PDS or the PDF and check that every activity that you're doing is covered in that policy. Okay, the second biggest, am I going too fast, Robin? Am I okay?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. The second big item that you need to tick off is pre-existing conditions. Now, for insurance, every insurance policy has its own definition. So you can't just think, I've read one, I know what they mean. You need to read it and make sure that anything you have that falls into that criteria that you have let the insurance company know. It could be something simple like an allergy. You went to the doctor last month and something had come up. You've had a previous fracture. They've all got to be declared. If you fail to declare that, then again, they can void your policy. So it's very important that you read through, make sure you have gone through every condition that they've listed. It's a lot of reading, but it is worthwhile. And the third thing, which is really important, is luggage. Now, a lot of people look at an insurance policy and think luggage cover $12,000. Oh, my slide disappeared. Oh, where did it go? Rob, the slide's gone.
That's all right. I'll go back to sharing. Just keep talking.
Okay. So
I'll reshare.
So with luggage, the total amount might say $12,000 and people think, oh, great, I've got $12,000 worth of coverage. That's not actually correct. What you need to do is go into the brochure and have a look, because in that $12,000, each item will have its own limit. So for example, excluding phones and laptops, each item limit may be only $500. So if your bike is a beautiful Trekomonda that's worth $6,000, your insurance policy won't actually cover that. So you'll need to look at extra insurance. And when you do look at that extra insurance, you need to look at all the things that are required for a bike. For example, when it's insured, is it insured while I'm using it? Is it insured while it's on the aeroplane? Is it insured if I leave it in transition, unsecured? All different things. So this is all in every insurance brochure. You have to read it. They are boring. I totally get it, but just knowing what's in there and what you're covered for could be the difference between losing out on a lot of money versus being completely covered. And the biggest thing on there is, what are the exclusions? So for every section of an insurance brochure, under every point there is fine print, which details the exclusion. As I just mentioned with bikes, generally they might say you're not covered whilst in use. You're not covered whilst you've left it in the coffee shop outside. It's not covered while it's in transition. It's not cable tied to something. So you have to read all those exclusions. And then at the back of the brochure, they have a whole list of general exclusions. And you must be aware of those, because those exclusions will determine whether or not you have cover. So absolutely, it's up to you to read the policy. Not every policy is the same, and you have to make sure it fits the purpose that you're trying to use it for. So the big thing is, are my activities covered? Do I need to declare anything? Is my bike worth more than $500? Yeah. All right, let's go on to the next part.
Can you see that slide okay, Kim?
I can see that one now, yes.
Okay, good. All right.
I just need to go to the next one. Okay.
Sorry, just wanted to highlight one thing on your slide there. At the bottom of this slide, it says, remember, it is up to you to know what you are and are not covered for. So make sure that you definitely read those documents. There we go.
And they're really good on the plane to read if you're bored. So when you go traveling, what should you have with you besides your passport, all your gear? So the first thing is a copy of your insurance certificate. Now, ideally, I suggest to my clients that they have that on their phone, but also in a printed form. because sometimes when you need it, the person that you're trying to give it to wants it printed. The second thing you need to have is a copy of the insurance PDS. This is their product disclosure statement. You can access this off their website. They generally email it to you when you buy a policy, but you need to have it with you, whether that's online or printed. And generally, ideally, I hope you would have read it and highlighted a few things that you need to be aware of. And this is a really important one. You need to know how to access the claim form while you're traveling. And they'll come to the reasons why later on. But when you buy an insurance policy, you need to ask them, where do you go to claim? How do I access the claim form? That's very important. Number 4, you need to have a credit card with a minimum limit of $2,500. And it's not for shopping. It is literally for a medical emergency. So credit card, minimum $2,500. My other suggestions are Google Translate or an alternative language converter. Always comes in handy when you're in Vietnam trying to get from A to B. And you should have the emergency phone number for your destination. So everyone knows in Australia it's 000. If you're in America, you would know it's 911. But what happens if you're in Singapore? You know, you need to know those numbers straight away. Who do I call if it's a medical emergency? And then you need to have your insurance emergency assistance phone number. So when you buy your insurance, they will have on the bottom of that PDF, for emergency assistance outside of Australia, please call this number reverse charge. So you should save that in your favorites when you're traveling, just in case you need to call it straight away. Okay, so 7 things: copy of your insurance, the PDS that you've read and highlighted, know how to access the claim form, a credit card with a minimum limit, Google Translate, know the emergency phone number for the country you're in, and have your insurance emergency assistance phone number saved on your phone. All right, let's go to the next slide. What do we do in an accident? First, we panic. No, we don't. We first seek medical attention. So if it's life-threatening, you already know what the emergency number is because you previously looked it up. If you're in Singapore or Vietnam or London, you know how to call somebody for an emergency. And ideally, if everyone's got first aid, you should be starting that. The second phone call should be to your travel insurance. And the reason why I suggest this is when you call the emergency line, the people operating this line are actually trained nurses for most insurance companies. So the first thing they're going to do is give you some guidance as to what needs to take place. They will then assist you in directing you to the nearest medical centre that they have approved. Okay. The third thing is, which hopefully you've got this on you, is to have the following, because you'll need to give this to any medical centre. Your ID, and usually it's a copy of your passport. 2, if you're in Australia, it's a Medicare card, and some countries in Europe have reciprocal rights like Italy. If you're in Australia, you need your private healthcare details. You also need to have that claim form. So if you think back on the previous slide where I mentioned that you need to have access to a claim form, if you get rushed to a hospital, the claim form needs to be completed by the attending physician at that hospital. If you don't get that done when you're being treated, you then have to pay for them to complete it at a later stage. You also need to have your certificate of insurance. The hospital will ask for that. And then your credit card. And the reason why you need a credit card, I'll explain to you on the next slide. But these things you should actually have saved on your phone so you've got them ready with you wherever you are. So insurance works on the principle of reimbursement. So what that means is that you cannot rock up to a hospital just waving a piece of paper and go, I've got insurance, treat me for free. What it means is that you're going to turn up to the hospital and they're going to ask you for payment up front for your treatment. And then when you get back, you're going to claim from the insurance company. So in the example, let's use an example of somebody going to hospital in Vietnam. So they would have had to pay a couple of $1,000s for their treatment. They had their claim form. The doctor would have filled in the claim form. When they got home, they would have submitted that and been reimbursed. But let's go to the next slide. What happens if your medical treatment is more than you can pay? So in Simon's case, $250,000, I don't have that in my bank account. I wish I did. So in this sense, what happens is you go to the hospital and they will take a deposit, which is why you have your credit card with a limit of $2,500. Usually the deposit might be about $1,000, like American dollars. And then you contact your insurance company and you let them know the situation and that the claim will be too much for you to pay. Now, the travel insurance company has to do a procedure where they go through the approval of your claim, and that can take 24 to 48 hours. And the things that they're doing in that time is checking your blood alcohol level. They're checking that whatever activity you were doing was covered under the policy, and then they'll send back an approval. And at that point in time, all your medical expenses from the hospital will then be covered under the insurance. But it's very important that when you go in an emergency situation, you must have at least a deposit to leave with the hospital before they'll treat you. Okay, and then next slide. And how to make a claim. So this can be sometimes one of the biggest pain points for people if you haven't collected stuff as you've gone. So I'm going to use an example of Kyle in Townsville. So Kyle had a bike accident, as some of you may be aware. We're inside Australia, so it's Medicare, it's private health insurance, and we also have Austro insurance. So he was covered for the Uber receipt to the hospital. He was covered for all the treatment that's not covered by Medicare. So I had receipts for Ubers. I had receipts for even food and coffee while we were there for all that time, and as well as x-rays that are not covered by Medicare and so forth. But what I didn't have with me at the time, was the claim form. So that actually cost me $200 to go back to the doctor a week later to get that form completed. So that's my own lesson. Make sure you have access to that. If you're overseas, get the hospital to print the claim form off, because it's very hard to go back a week later to a hospital in Canada or Singapore and get that form completed. So that should hopefully give you some ideas on what to look for with insurance and how to proceed if something, God forbid, ever happened. Does anyone have a question about that? I said that. Kyle was just reminding me, collect all your receipts as you go. Thanks, Kyle. He's had a few insurance claims.